What's up, guys? Shout out to Lee for this next video because he actually hooked me up with a record I'm about to talk about. I think in an attempt to sort of broaden my horizons on UK hip-hop, which, I'm not 100% completely oblivious to, but it was really not my scene growing up, so I did ignore almost all of it throughout the decades, and only now in sort of the internet age am I kind of playing catch-up to most of it. I knew a little bit that got ported over. Mainly Derek B, I guess. He was the guy. Good Groove, that was a big, UK hip-hop? It's Derek B. So I knew that. I knew a couple other things. This particular video, though, we're going to talk about a group called the Demon Boyz, a very sort of big, well-respected in UK hip-hop crew, who I was familiar with a little bit, thanks mainly to this tape right here, Hard as Hell Volume 2. And I guess let me just take a minute to sort of explain this. So you remember a video I did a while ago about a Father MC record that basically was on release, except for on this one import compilation album called Def Beats? Well, Def Beats was a UK album, import, like I just said, which featured a lot of UK hip-hop, not all UK, obviously, because it included Father MC. Well, this is sort of a sequel to that. After Def Beats Volume 1, there was Hard as Hell Volume 2, because it was a sequel to Def Beats. It was really like Hard as Hell was the subtitle to Def Beats 2 in the UK. And that was imported to America as just Hard as Hell, because we didn't have Def Beats. So this was like the first one, and it was a compilation of all UK hip-hop artists. It was released here by Profile in like 1987-88. And it's really basically sort of a showcase of hip-hop artists that were on that label that I guess Profile thought was big enough and compelling enough to release over here. So then, in the UK, they made Hard as Hell Volume 3, which you would think would be Def Beats 3 with a new subtitle, but no, they scrapped that and just called it Another Hard as Hell. So Hard as Hell 3 in the UK is Hard as Hell 2 here. So the two Hard as Hell albums, 3 in the UK but 2 for us in the USA, were largely what introduced, I think, a lot of heads, certainly me, but I think I speak for a lot of heads, to UK hip-hop in the USA in the 80s. This was 1987-88. And it featured, a lot of guys like Einstein, MC Duke, Hijack, who were the UK group that Ice-T signed to the Rhyme Syndicate, but this was actually before that. This is, in fact, their song Wild Style, pretty much on these Hard as Hell albums, I think is what got them signed to the Rhyme Syndicate. Yeah, the She-Rockers, who were Betty Boo's old group. I think Betty Boo was really the only artist who kind of actually made it over to the United States, had kind of a big hit with Betty Boo doing her thing. But she was pretty big in the UK for a long time, had a lot of records in her earlier group, She-Rockers was. Einstein is on here. The Thrash Pack, which were a total rip-off of the Beastie Boys. Actually, the song on here doesn't sound so much like Beastie Boys, but some other stuff I was familiar with, totally, absolutely. They're doing the Beastie Boys voice, the style, the delivery, having the guitars and rock. It was totally Beastie Boys, and I think that's why their career is so short-lived, because they were so plainly derivative. Although not terrible, just completely derivative. And anyway, the best group on here, unquestionably, even from back in the days I remember, were the Demon Boyz. Oh, and also Asher D and Daddy Freddy were on here. Of course, we knew them because their one Ragamuffin Hip Hop was a big U.S. record. But people don't really think of them as being European. But that's, they came from London, sort of. I mean, Daddy Freddy is obviously Jamaican. I believe Asher D is as well. And Daddy Freddy had already done some stuff, but he went to England to do that album. That's where it blew up. And then that came over here. So it's really essentially, in a way, a British record, and that's why it's on this compilation. But anyway, so the Demon Boyz, they have 2 songs on here. This is a cassette version, actually. I think maybe the LP only had 1, but this has 2. Both great songs, Rough Like an Animal and Northside. Northside has a great track. Rough Like an Animal is just them going back and forth, exchanging verses constantly. It's a really kind of a long song. You actually kind of listen to the album, you're like, is this still the same one song I'm listening to? It's just going on and on. So it's really impressive. Constant nice verses. It was 2 guys and a DJ. Demon Boyz always have nice cutting. And like I said, this is really actually all I knew about the Demon Boyz for the longest time, even up until very recently when I got this record. This record I'm still working my way towards. But I did know, like, if you asked me how many albums did they have, I would know to say 2. I knew they had 2 albums and stuff. But basically, I really just kind of knew their songs from this compilation. But I haven't gone back. They've actually had a lot of dope material. It's just the 2 guys, Demon D, Mike J, plus their DJ. I think they actually switched DJs from album 1 to album 2. But it's basically the 2 guys and a DJ, and they have lots of nice scratching on a lot of their records. That's a real kind of a staple of the group. And the one guy, Mike J, is sort of ragamuffin style, and then Demon D is more traditionally United States classical hip-hop. So sometimes you'll see Demon Boyz classified as like ragamuffin hip-hop, and then you listen to their records and it's like, it really doesn't sound that ragamuffin at all. Some of the later stuff does a little bit more. It's really because it's just the one guy who's got that style, and it's only really, like when you listen to stuff like on this album, on this compilation, he's really just sort of doing basic traditional hip-hop with just a little bit of his accent and maybe throwing in one or two slang words, but really doesn't strike you, especially since they've already got London accents. It really doesn't almost strike you as an American listener that it is ragamuffin hip-hop, but it sort of is. And like I said, later on they added some more stuff. But this, we're going to talk about, is more strictly, classically United States style hip-hop. But this record here is called International Karate. It's from 1990, so it's a little bit later than the Hard as Hell stuff. It's actually in between their two albums. It's the last single they did on Word Sound / Island Records. It's a pretty big monster track. It's a great instrumental. It's pretty raw, pretty rough, got a lot of kind of hard elements to it. In fact, you recognize a little tiny guitar riff, little samples kind of laid into the mix, actually from Dr. Dre and DOC, the DOC and the Doctor, and they're cutting up Curtis Blow a little bit on the hook. It's a really cool track. You're going to hear it's live, hardcore kind of stuff. And it's got a good message to it. They're rapping sort of about hardships of being black and in the UK, which is obviously a little bit different, but really essentially the same kind of messages, and, you know, looking for work. And it's what's cool about it is kind of really raw, and I think it's really them. Like a lot of UK hip hop, it sort of sounds like they're just saying what the Americans are saying, but then when they're talking about like, oh, I can't get a job because of my gold teeth and all, I really feel like, okay, this is actually the Demon Boyz expressing themselves. They've got very distinct voices, which might put off American listeners a little bit, especially Mike J, because again, he's got a little bit of that ragamuffin mixed with the London accents and all that. But it sounds kind of dope. I mean, Demon D, like it even sounds a little bit demonic, which might be why that's their name. So it takes a little getting used to really kind of latch onto it, but definitely the instrumental is pretty live. So I'm going to play a clip of it. I'm not sure, actually, to be honest. I think I still prefer Northside and the other track from Hard as Hell, but this is a really dope 12-inch. It's just the one song in the instrumental. Unfortunately, it's a 45 because that's a more common thing to do with 12 inches in the UK. But it's a dope picture cover, as you see. And one thing, too, about this 12-inch and what makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more essential, is that it's not on either of their albums. When I talk about, like, okay, I kind of like Rougher Than an Animal a little bit better, you know, from Hard as Hell, that's on their first album. Northside's on their first album. They had a big hit, kind of Gliminy Glaminy, on their second album, which I actually like a little bit less. It's a little bit more reggae, too. It's okay, but that's on their second album. This isn't on either of their albums. This is a 12-inch only cut because it caught them... Their two albums were on two different labels, and this was sort of would have been the first track on their second album had they stayed with the first label, except it also sort of is on their second album. There's a song on there called Outer National Karate, which lyrically is the same song. It's just a remix. A totally different beat, but lyrically it's exactly the same. And the title, of course, actually kind of makes no sense unless you know it's a reference to International Karate. I mean, the concept that living in society is hard and complicated like International Karate is a little thin, but still. Let's have a listen.
You know, we're dealing with a very critical and crucial time. Most crucial and critical times that I've ever witnessed, being as young as I am.
Yo, this is serious. I hope you listen. While I bust out your mind like a christening, taking this topic to the tip of the top. Whatever you're doing, just stop. Watch, listen. Observe this. From the time I was born, niggas to fight this battle. I'm in rough like karate. I leave the devs good and ain't good and that hard. I work about the fly in different places, playing the dramatic. The people that are racist, using you, abusing you, polluting your mind. When you get your pay, you fit the line. But how much do you get? Is it worth for the sweat and the sweat? They got you hanging on the string and fray. While the brothers on the streets, I get hang in a different way. Criminal, they're what it's stealing. But little did you know, but your brothers is a feeling from the heart and soul and mind. So I want the vibe. I don't want the vibe. I don't want the vibe. Now living in society is like karate. Karate is hard, and you gotta be persistent. You gotta be strong. Sometimes it'll fail, but the game ain't game. You gotta strive and strive. You get put down mentally and put down physically.
So yeah, the Demon Boyz pretty much just had the two albums and then they broke up. So their career kind of ended in 1992. But one of them, Mike J, kind of made a comeback in more recent years. In fact, I think he's still active online, or at least, you know, in the late 2000s. And you know, he's putting out singles on YouTube and stuff like that. And he's had some comeback mixtapes and stuff. So he's still doing, he actually changed his name to like Million Man or something like that. But it's Mike J from the Demon Boyz. And they're definitely, you know, not so well known, I don't think, to US heads, but if you know UK hip hop at all, they're one of the big acts, one of the more respected acts especially, and they're pretty dope, and I think we've just heard why. So that's the Demon Boyz, a 12-inch that's worth checking out, even if you do have their albums, which I don't yet, but definitely something I'll be looking to score soon. But either way, it's a 12-inch exclusive, so absolutely worth checking out. International Karate, which I think is better than International Karate, although they're both good in their own ways. They got some pretty distinct style production. The international version is a little bit harder, and the international version is a little bit smoother, funkier, a little bit more bass heavy. Both have their strengths, but I think I prefer this one. 12-inch exclusive, definitely recommend it. And there you go, some UK hip hop, which you don't usually see on my channel, but I do recommend this. So that's it. See you guys next time.